My birthday's January 25th, so I was born 1968. Havre, Montana, which is up on what we call the High Line of Montana, north central Montana. It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And my parents at the time were school teachers in a little town of Harlem, Montana. And Havre was the closest hospital an hour away that was not on the Indian reservation. So yeah, the youngest of four, actually, all of which are here this weekend. So yeah, we lived up in that area till I was 4 years old. So when I was very young, we moved to a town, Choteau, Montana, and my dad had a business opportunity there, and we moved when I was very young. So basically, that's the town I grew up in. Later lived in when my kids were young and I was married, and it's a town of classic Mayberry town of 1,700 people. Courthouse with the road around it in the middle of Main Street. Went to a high school at the time of 185 kids in 4 grades where I excelled in music and drama and was a athlete. And it was the ultimate, if you were to draw a picture of small town America and a kid growing up in small town America, riding his bike to the swimming pool every day and baseball glove on the handlebars of my bike. That was it. That was the place I lived. Growing up, my dad was a rodeo announcer, and my mom was a timer in rodeo. So he had the opportunity when we were young to go into the professional ranks, but chose, he had us at home and had a full-time job. So our rodeo experience was summers. Every weekend in the summer, we had a camper on a pickup and then a small motorhome, and we'd go travel with our dad to rodeos all summer in small towns in Montana. And so by assimilation, I knew everything about rodeo, putting on a rodeo, behind the scenes. My mom always says I grew up on the steps of a rodeo or of an announcer's stand. And I'd just sit on the steps and I'd watch everything behind the scenes and in the arena. But that was, we were just immersed in the rodeo world. And honestly, I knew it was part of my childhood, but I have one brother that really was involved in rodeo and wears a cowboy hat to work every day to this day. I didn't really care. I knew it was a part of my life. I knew everything there was to know about it, but I was a football player, basketball player. I was headed off to college later. It interested me, but I had no intention of it ever being part of my life. So I finished high school, did well in school. I was a good student. Went to Western Montana College, Dillon, Montana, down in southwestern Montana. And I was very active in high school in everything. And so when I got to college, I was a little lost. Got involved in a lot of intramurals and different things, but the rodeo intersection happens. It was after my first year of college, and my oldest brother, Will, who is now a professional rodeo announcer, we were having a discussion around the dinner table, my dad and him and me, and I kind of basically was spouting off a little about the funny rodeo clown. I didn't want to be a bullfighter. Bullfighters were different. The rodeo clowns, the comedy guys, I just felt like they were doing the same old thing since I was a little kid. I said, wow, they tell the same jokes. It's the same shtick, kind of. Said, man, I think I could step in and do better than they could. And they dared me to do it. I was 19 years old and stepped in, and we had some trust in our family name. My brother was headed a couple weeks from that point to go announce a rodeo in Superior, Montana, way western Montana, and called the committee and said, hey, my brother wants to be the clown, and there was some trust there, and they said, yeah, it was a small amateur rodeo, and did that, and then did a college rodeo, and a stock contractor said, hey, come do my rodeos next summer, and I'll pay you this, not very much. And that's kind of where the root of it was, a little bit. I kind of went back to all those, a little bit of those rodeo clown jokes that I said they shouldn't tell anymore, but I knew I could tell them better. I was always had a stage presence and comedic timing with things, and loved being in front of crowds. I missed that rush from being an athlete, so I was, loved that feeling of being out in front of crowds like I did at a football game or whatever, and so it kind of became my summer job. Go to college, and then I'd be rodeo clown at these small rodeos, and people started to know me even at college. People started to know who I was with it, and I think what really benefited the building of my career was I didn't really have big goals. I didn't go, I want to be a rodeo clown and entertain crowds, and in 3 years I'm going to be at the NFR. And I think that's, a lot of guys do that, and it was my summer job. It was fun. And so I did small amateur rodeos for 5-6 years, and unbeknownst was kind of perfecting the craft of what I wanted my niche to be, what I wanted my character to be, what my, lo and behold, the character was me. Learned how to take the talents I had, which were music and singing and stand-up comedy type timing, and I was starting to polish it up and make it pretty good. And in the meantime, started to get phone calls about, hey, are you ever going to think about the PRCA and bigger rodeos? In the meantime, I got a teaching job. I had a kid a guy who's probably now 50 years old, call me Coach on Facebook the other day. Congratulations, Coach. That might have been the greatest thing I've had in years, So yeah, I was Mr. Rasmussen in the math and history class, Coach Rass on the football field and track, and I'd take my clown barrel out in the parking lot, take one of my classes out, and we'd go over what I thought I should educate them what I did in the summer, what my other job was. And it was interesting. Yeah. And so, yeah, they knew. I never was an old bull rider. I never was a bullfighter that was done with that job and transitioned. All I wanted to do was entertain crowds. And so that was it. Yeah, it was winter of 1993, and I was single and didn't own anything. No debt. It was just this perfect situation of, let's try this for a couple of years. I was 25 years old. Why would I not give it a try in that situation? So I resigned my teaching job and started, getting the word out that I was available, and it was lean for a few years. It doesn't just, maybe, I don't know, maybe young people think this happens. I didn't go, hey, I'm here, and within the first year was making a great living and was a well-known rodeo clown. It was, I got married in that time. My wife at the time was going to grad school, then got a teaching job. I went and sold cars for a bit, and in the meantime did all the rodeos I could. And I've had people say, oh, what a easy thing it was. You had everything handed to you and this and that, and they missed out on all that because it was tough. It was, I will say, probably some of the best times of my life, when we had nothing and were just driving, grinding away to make everything work. And yeah, I do believe I would have got a break because I truly believe I was very good at what I was doing. But in this business, it's word of mouth. Somebody needs to know what you're doing. Interesting. I attribute this story to the biggest break I ever got in my career. I had been approved to be in the PRCA. It was the summer of '94, and it was getting into the fall. didn't have a teaching job. I was single still. And I got a phone call. I think it was September or October, maybe. It was a little cold up in the north. And I got a phone call from a rodeo producer that was putting on the rodeo in Hibbing, Minnesota. Hibbing, Minnesota is famous for two things. It's the home of Greyhound Bus and Kevin McHale, Boston Celtics great. That's all I know. And he said, I have a rodeo. This was on Wednesday. He said, we have a rodeo in Hibbing, Minnesota, starts Friday night. Steve Tomac, really great rodeo clown at the time. They called him the senator because he was a state senator in North Dakota. He was driving down the highway. He was scheduled to come to Hibbing. His trailer caught on fire. He can't come. They burned up everything. Can you be to Hibbing, Minnesota by Friday evening? And I said, you damn right I can. And I took off and drove across Highway 2, across the north high line of Montana, across North Dakota, scared to death. Get to Hibbing, Minnesota. It's gray. It's cold. It's in this little hockey arena. 3-day rodeo. One of the stock contractors there that brought bucking horses there was a guy named Joe Simon. And he saw me and he came and introduced himself. One of the men he was in business with was a guy, a man that was a promoter, producer, legendary bull rider too, named Jerome Robinson, the late Jerome Robinson. And he put on winter rodeos up in the Northwest, Portland, Sacramento. And Joe Simon called and said, Jerome, there's a young kid. Jerome was always looking for young, new people for a couple of reasons. He liked to help young people. For two, he didn't like to pay very much. So Joe called Jerome Robinson, and Jerome Robinson got a hold of me. Said, I heard you did a good job in Minnesota. I'd like you to come and do a couple of rodeos. The winter of '95, Portland and Sacramento. Would you like to come? I said, yes, I would like to come. Well, as it turns out, Jerome Robinson is one of the most influential figures in rodeo, and at the time was on the ground level. The PBR had hired him to do a lot of their production, and so my style fit his rodeos, but it also fit the style of what the PBR was trying to accomplish. So Jerome Robinson helped me in the ground floor of doing PBR events in the winters as well. Mm-hmm. So that break of Steve Tomac's trailer catching on fire, I do believe my career would have taken off, but that put me in touch with Jerome Robinson, and things took off from there, all because I lit Steve Tomac's trailer on fire. So yeah, I mean, it's a weird break, but it was all about word of mouth, and it took off. I mean, it didn't take off real fast. But I started doing bigger and bigger rodeos, and eventually, by word of mouth, through my friend Joe Bumgartner, who's a great bullfighter, he got a hold of John Growney, famous stock contractor, and had word with these big rodeos in the spring in California. So it really, it snowballs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what happens is the bigger, here you all are all of a sudden in these beautiful places and the rodeos that I heard about my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And it makes, maybe it doesn't do it to other people. It made me go, okay, I got to get my ass in gear and I got to be better. I got to keep perfecting my craft. What started to happen then as I started to say, wait, I think I have a style here that can really be different than everyone else. And not just, hey, it's a young guy, it's a new face in the rodeo clown world, let's get him. I started to go, I think I can take this a whole different direction. And I did. I used, I happened to hit at a time when music directors were becoming a part of rodeo, where it was music, pop music, and audience participation music. And I always was a dancer, so I incorporated my talents in. I mean, at that time, who did a Michael Jackson act in the rodeo? I did. And it wasn't just a Michael Jackson joke. I can really dance like Michael Jackson. So I started to incorporate everything I was good at into my act and really polish it up, make it. I knew to be at those rodeos, they expected really great, and I wanted to be great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, really trying things on the fly. Mm-hmm. You know, playing off of music, I'd play a song and I go, ooh, I can do something with this. And I was pretty confident in, you know, watched a lot of TV. I'm a visual learner, so I'd watch dancing stuff on TV and pick it up. Mm-hmm. And so I kept up with what was happening in the world with music and dancing and incorporate that. So not only are you touching and affecting rodeo fans, which frankly, some of the good old rodeo fans, they didn't really like what I did. Mm-hmm. You know, it was new and different. I don't have a car that breaks in half and big shoes, you know, but in turn, I was capturing a younger demographic audience at these rodeos and tying them in. I can honestly say, when I think of rodeos, you know, the Pendleton Roundup and Cheyenne Frontier Days and Ellensburg, Washington and St. Paul, Oregon, Sisters, Oregon, I had a fan base there. I didn't just go and the rodeo fans liked what I was doing. I had a fan base. Mm-hmm. They were bringing signs. Mm-hmm. The kids were dressing like me. I mean, I'm not saying that as to say, hey, look what I did. It was just different. And ultimately, you know, that was kind of my goal, is to change it, to change things. Well, it wasn't a year before that I said, I'll never be at the NFR. I'm not. I told my wife, I don't know, I'm not going to get my hopes up. And lo and behold, 1998 was the first year I did the NFR, and it's pretty surreal when, as a kid, you gather around the TV in December and watch the one performance of the NFR that was on TV, the 10th round, the Heston telecast from Oklahoma City and then Vegas. And as a family, we watched it on TV. None of us had been. I went to the NFR in about 1990 with my parents. I had just finished college and student teaching. And then I'd been a couple times since when I went to the convention, you know, different things. But for me to roll my barrel out, when people say, what is the biggest moment of your career that you remember? It was that. It was rolling my barrel into Thomas and Mack in the middle of that. Nobody has any idea how bright the lights are down on that arena floor. And the little tunnel that goes to the dirt. And we weren't allowed to leave the locker room. Like, you sit in the locker room, you watch it on TV monitors, and the barrel racing starts, and you walk down this little tunnel, and the light and the sound is coming up that tunnel. And I was sweating. And yeah, I mean, to this day, I know exactly how it felt. And that gate flew open. They said, go ahead. And I rolled my barrel out, and I was in a blur. And I had been threatened to, you can't do anything. You get in the barrel and stand there. And I was afraid to even wave at the crowd. And so what I did was, through my career and through performing, I was taught you never chew gum. Mm-hmm. You know, whether you're speaking, performing. But I knew I wasn't doing anything as far as talking. I was in the barrel at the NFR. So somebody gave me a piece of gum. I said, yeah, I'm not doing it. Well, I didn't realize I was getting after the gum. And my parents were there. And it was, I remember I finished, I was soaking wet just because it's 15 bull riders and it was cool. I'd walk my barrel and I was doing, you know, whatever. It was crazy. It was a blur. And I went and I got dressed and I went up, rode the elevator up on the concourse of Thomas and Mack Arena. And there's my parents, so proud, you know, I'm 30 years old and my wife with me and I no kids yet. My wife was pregnant at the time with one of these girls. And here comes my mom and dad. And my mom looked at me and I was expecting something. She said, how was your gum? I chewed my gum. She said, how was your gum? I've never chewed gum in the arena since. Because that's all my mom brought up, was that I was chewing gum in the arena at the NFR. But yeah, greatest moment of my career ever. Funny thing, they just kept voting me in. Yeah, 8 times in a row. And after the 8th time is when it was before the 8th time, but that's when I made the decision after an offer from the PBR to just do exclusively PBR things. I just felt like I did everything I could do in rodeo. I can't say I was bored. I can't say I was burned out. But I was plateaued. I was, okay, what else is there? I went, I was going to, Tucson and Red Bluff and Clovis and Reno. I'm just naming some. Reno and St. Paul, Oregon, and to Calgary and Cheyenne and Ellensburg and Pendleton. And I was doing them and had been for a few years. Okay, what now what? Right. Now what? You were winning awards. I was at the top I really felt like I was doing well. My performances, I had honed in on what I should be doing and what pulled crowds in and fan bases. But on the other hand, one of my goals was always to pull fans in, not just from the rodeo world, but from mainstream, make them fans. And with the PBR saying, how would you like to just work for us? I knew I could go to these venues that weren't traditional rodeo fans, still have those rodeo fans, but what about the people in Anaheim, California? What about Madison Square Garden? What about wherever we were going, St. Louis and Kansas City and in these NBA arenas and NHL arenas? What about that? And I knew I could fly every weekend. It was an employment opportunity. I was an employee of the company. There's benefits, there's insurance and a 401k, and it was never about the money. People think that, but it was never about the money, because I was making a fine living rodeoing, but it was a steady thing, and the girls were small, and I thought, I can fly on a weekend, and then when I'm home, I'm home. I'm home during the week. So yeah, it was okay. So I'm not a bullfighter. Yeah. I mean, I can say that. People say, oh, we don't call you a clown, you're a bullfighter. I'm not a bullfighter. I've been a comedy clown forever. I've been on my own platforms a little outspoken about, all of a sudden, rodeo clowns are your rodeo entertainer. I'll be clear about something. I was called a rodeo clown until I went to the PBR, and I wasn't a rodeo clown because it wasn't a rodeo. So we actually went through a process. What do we call you? I don't know. So what we did is we went back and forth, and I said, actually, I'm your arena entertainer. And because I didn't do a lot of clowny type stuff, and the PBR, we were taking a different direction about kind of becoming more contemporary. And so I said, I'm the arena entertainer. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, sure. It wasn't this big deal. I never raised hell about it. Right. All of a sudden, there's rodeo clowns, and it's your rodeo entertainer. I'm your entertainer. And I went, hey guys, be proud of that. I have 8 buckles that say PRCA Clown of the Year, and I'm proud of that. The rodeo clown title that's a prestigious, that's a tradition thing. So people are like, don't call him a clown. You can call me whatever you want. We just had to change. It just wasn't a rodeo. That was a kind of a thought out thing, but I want to, I tell young guys, you're a rodeo clown. Get over it. Everybody here's going to, if you wear makeup on your face, they're going to call you a damn clown. So be okay with that. So yeah, I'm okay. Tell people, they say, what do you do? I had a really good career as a rodeo clown. Because if I say, if they say, you with the rodeo? Yeah, what do you do? I'm the entertainer guy in the arena. What do you mean? I'm the rodeo clown. Oh, cool. So, yeah, let's not get too full of ourselves here with it. That's kind of my philosophy. If I'm the funny guy in the arena and I say, I'm a rodeo clown, they say, oh my God, you're the brave one that saves those cowboys. No. If one of my bullfighter friends says, I'm a rodeo bullfighter, oh, you're the funny guy in the barrel. No, it doesn't matter what we say. But I try to explain it in layman's terms. I'm the entertainer in the arena. Well, what do you mean? I do comedy, singing, dancing. At commercial breaks, I entertain the crowd and keep the show going. Oh, cool, you're the rodeo clown. Yeah. Oh, wow, you're crazy. And then the dreaded question, how'd you ever get into that? And then that's where I say, it's a long story. And that's where I try to end the conversation. For one, I was really strong in rodeo entertaining during timed events, steer wrestling, tie down roping, team roping. I had material, and that's when I really interacted with the crowd, because timed events, you say who's up, who's next, and there's a little time there. So with the PBR, obviously my material, anything I used with steer wrestlers or calf ropers, it was gone, But what was fun for me was I had a lot of fun, really high energy. When the bull riding would roll around at the rodeo and there was 15 bull riders, I was high energy during the bull riding. I was jumping over the barrel. I was dancing on top of it. I was getting the crowd involved. So really I saw PBR as a chance. Wow, I have 40 of them to do this. And they didn't want rodeo clown acts with props and gimmicks. I just had to do what I was the strongest at, and that's sing and dance and stand-up comedy, audience interaction, sponsorship engagement. Everything that I truly loved doing was what I got to do in the PBR. Mm-hmm. So really it was by the way, I was doing both for a long time. I was doing PBR shows and rodeo at the same time. When I went to the PBR, I just eliminated the rodeo part of it. So really the best thing about it was every single week I pretty much worked with the same announcers, the same music guy. The arena was set up exactly the same. The sound was good. All I had to worry about is what I could bring. I didn't have to worry about all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. Who's the announcer? Is the sound good? Where am I going to park my trailer? Didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. Get off a plane, check into my hotel, go to the arena, worry about what I was doing. I learned that there was something really fun about cities that were really sports cities. People ask all the time, where's your favorite place to go to a PBR? And I never really answer, but I always say my sneaky favorite was always Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Big crowds, sports fans. They had an element of, they weren't deep-rooted urban cities, so they knew bull riding. They were high energy. They had the Royals and the Chiefs and Sacramento, California. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly unbelievable crowds. Intimidating place, New York City. Hard. Really, guys that are following me there, I'm like, be patient. They're harsh. They're judging you. They're used to, if you're doing a show in Madison Square Garden, you better bring your good stuff, because they're used to Broadway, anything in MSG, all of it. And they're tough. You got to warm up to them. It's intimidating. People would always say, I'll bet Madison Square Garden's your favorite place to go. Not at all. There are two places that are not my favorite, Madison Square Garden and Billings, Montana, because they're both critical. So yeah, they're sports cities. Pretty fun. And I'm a sports guy. So yeah. The great thing was I've done my Outside the Barrel talk show for 20 years, because I was always enthralled with late night talk shows, Johnny Carson. So that, my brother's an announcer, my dad's an announcer, my brother's a radio guy. I have exposure to it. It wasn't all of a sudden thing. And yeah, I love interviewing people. I love interacting with people. So TV was kind of a transition. I don't do much of it now. Surprisingly, when I was done in the arena, that yearning to be on camera kind of faded a little bit. So the TV, color commentator, backstage interviews, I'm not terribly passionate about it, if I'm going to be honest. It's fine, but I have no issue with it. It doesn't scare me. Being inducted into this Hall of Fame, people say, oh my God, do you have to give it up and give a speech? Yeah, that's the part I'm looking forward to the most. I love standing in front of. I do a lot of graduation speeches, civic organizations. I do a lot of public speaking. So what happened was, I can say this, that in the process of doing my Outside the Barrel talk show at the NFR, rodeo, every business is a business of imitation. Mm-hmm. So a few years into that, then all of a sudden, hey, at this trade show, let's put up a stage. We'll have that rodeo clown host a talk show. Well, I didn't host a talk show because I'm a rodeo clown. I hosted a talk show because I'm pretty good at it. So now there's shows everywhere. And so it was pretty natural for me. I loved all of that. And it's not easy, but it doesn't scare me. My job, my style was very physical. There's two aspects to my job that eventually wore me out and burned me out. Number one, physically. I danced, I jumped, I ran, I climbed, I went to the top of arenas, I went to the top of stadiums. That's one part of it. The other part is I never had a script. Let's be frank here. There's rodeo clowns that have a list of jokes you can predict in the show when it's coming. That is one way to do the job that fans appreciate, I guess. To me, that doesn't take much energy. That's like memorizing the answers for the history test or doing the calculus problem over here, which I majored in both of those, by the way. My job, I'd go in with an open mind. I had a Rolodex in my mind of things that can happen, but my best way I can describe how I did my job was all the time. And 2 hours in, I was tired. So after 25, 30 years of it, I just got to a point. I always thought every performance you should step out there and try to be better. And I got to the point where physically and emotionally, I didn't feel like I wanted to get any better because I was tired. Really came down to being tired. My body, I was in a lot of pain, so that takes the fun out of it. Emotionally, I didn't feel like I had anything left to give. And it was just time. And I'd been thinking about it for a couple years. And the last year I talked to my boss, the CEO, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll let you know about March, what the next year looks like. And I was middle of January. I said, I'm done. It's not fun. I mean, once I got out there and was rolling, I had fun performances, but overall the experience was not what it's supposed to be. I think we glamorize the rodeo business to the point that it's a false sense of everything's okay. My girls going to the PBR and being gone on the weekends was a good idea. And then all of a sudden they were in junior high and going to junior high rodeos, and guess when they were? On the weekends. So all of a sudden they got to the age that everything they were doing I was missing. A family can grow distant. I'm not married anymore. If I have one big regret from my career, that is the one that I could pick out. There's no handbook for a guy from a town of 1,700 people that all of a sudden performs in front of 25,000 people and they all want something from him. And I caught myself being grouchy at home because I didn't know how to navigate it all. Then I got to where I didn't want to leave home. I'd get home and the girls had a rodeo and I had to fly to Florida and I didn't want to go, and I had some depression. I mean, I don't know that people want to hear that, but that is the navigation of, besides in the arena, that things can fall apart, and they fell apart a little for me. Through all of this, my girl's mom played as huge a role as my career as anybody, but she's not here this week. And that is tough. It's still hard. And, my girls are here. They're sitting right there. And,
Were you surprised they got into rodeo themselves?
Was I surprised?
Yeah.
No, their mom's a stud. Yeah. No, their mom is a pro rodeo circuit finalist, horse trainer. I introduced them to the business, but the one that taught them everything was their mom. They can ride any horse, they can train a horse, they can fix a horse. They're, but we worked together, for the most part. We were together through their high school rodeo careers and tried to teach them it's more about the person you are than success. But they've been very successful. And so I don't know. I didn't know if I'd have basketball players. One was a little bit of a track star for a couple of years, and that was more up my alley. And they're well known in the rodeo world for sure. They're national champs at Montana State. So, yeah.
Brag on them for a little bit.
No, I could do that. Yeah, I do that for sure. Yeah. They're annoying though. Like, just cramp my style, but no, that's it. Like I always say, I said in an interview, if I'm just known as Paige and Shelby's dad, that's good. And at Montana State University, that's what I am, is their dad. And like I said, their mom played a big role in everything we did. And I will say it's a hard business. And I think everyone in this business would agree. They just don't always talk about it. I'm not really afraid to talk about it. But I always think, was it all worth it? Yeah. I just wish the ending maybe could have been different. So they were boarding group number 1 on an American Airlines flight, and I was in group number 4, and I got the phone call from my good friend Rob Smets. Called me, and he said, well, I know if I usually call you, you probably don't look forward to it. And he congratulated me, and I was standing there in the airport, and I didn't know who to tell. And there was a couple guys of our security guys that I worked with, and I told them, and I think I maybe called my girls, I can't remember. And then I sent a group text to my brothers and sister and parents, and so it's a big deal to me. And my entire family is here. My parents are alive, and I just appreciate that maybe I appreciate getting honored where I didn't have to go into that waiting period. I don't know if that's a thing where if you sit and wait for a long time, you get better. People forget maybe that. But it's nice that I can share it with my parents, and they're all here. And I'm a little nervous but excited. It's hard because I come from a family that doesn't show a lot of emotion, so I try to do this a little bit. Yeah, but it's an honor, and to me, like my one brother I have a brother that's a rodeo announcer. My other brother doesn't make a living at rodeo, but he's a rancher. He's a cowboy. And he said, Oklahoma City, that's the big one. That's the good one. He said, so that's how I feel too.